So far we have the parak about the onus of Mafata, then Motzi Shema, and now starts a new subject. And this is the schuyot, I would say schuyot in English, the schuyot that the father has in his daughter. Rights. Okay, that's a good word. The rights, the authority. So it starts off. So a new subject, nothing to do with Motzi Shema anymore. A general law. So this is talking about the Rashi says both the Ketana and even the Nara also. It means even after she's 12, she's a Gedola, but till she's a Bulgaris, till she's 12 and a half. So Ha'av Zakai Bebito and the following things: the Kiddushaha with the her Kiddushin, which means he's allowed to marry her off. He has the authority to marry off his daughter, but both when she's a Ketana, also when she's a Naira, which was a Chiddush because she's already a Gedola, she's already an adult. She's 12 years old, she's 2 stars. But since still it's the father who has the authority and the decision making of her getting married. And I'm not sure if we're going to see everything in Gemara, but it seems that Allah is going to be both. He makes the decision without asking her. It means you don't need her consent. She cannot marry herself off. The father could marry her off, and she cannot desist. She can't argue. Not only a Ketana, even a Nara. Just to make this and just in the words Bekesef, Ishtar, Babiyah, the 3 kinds of Kedushin, and that's all explaining the word Kedushin. The father has the authority over his daughter as far as marriage. Kesef, Ishtar, and Babiyah, that's the 3 ways that a woman can get married. Either the husband, gives her money, Shava Pruta, or Rim, like we do nowadays. Ishtar means it gives her a contract that says on it, Hariyat Pekudeshasli, and Biyah is that they have relations, but not relations about after they're married, but that's the way that they get married. They have the actual erison through a Maisa Biyah. So the money, there's also another issue besides the fact that he's the one who has the jurisdiction to decide that she's getting married, but also he gets the money also. By Shtar and Biyah, the point isn't the money over there. There doesn't have to be any money. It could be Shtar and Biyah that he's the one who decides if she could get married. He could be the one who could accept the Shtar also. But Biyah just means that he's the one who decides that she should be married, and he has the jurisdiction over his daughter. It could be also there's money involved also that he could give his daughter to one who gives him money. That's the side point that he can make money on the deal also. That's not the main point. So the issue that the father has the jurisdiction over his daughter as far as marriage, and there are 3 kinds of marriages, Kesef, Shtar, and Biyah. The Gemara is going to talk about the fact that the money goes to the father also. Not only has the jurisdiction over the daughter, but the money that the husband gives as the Kesef Kedushin, the ring, so to speak, so that goes to the father when she's a Nara before she's a Bulgaris. And the Mishnah continues. Also, the father has the rights to her findings. So if she finds something, even though she's already an adult, she's already 12, but still the findings go to the father. The Gemara is going to explain each one. If she earns money, so the earnings go to the father. And if Farasandara means that he has the right to nullify her vow. That's the first Parshas Mata, so it's about the father and about the husband. Here it says that the father has the right to nullify her vows until she's a Bulgaris, until she's 12 and a half. Also, Makabalas Gita, he has the jurisdiction over her get. That if the husband wants to divorce her, so he doesn't have to give the get to the daughter, he gives the get to the father. You don't have to have any consent over there because the girl herself, the wife herself, also doesn't have to have any consent. The husband could divorce his wife even against her will, according to the Torah, according to the Rabbanan also. But they made it the Chayim Devarim Gershon. But the law is really that he could be divorced against her will. But the point is that he's the yad, he's the hand in order to accept the get, and even if the husband will give the get to the father, his father-in-law, that's the get. But in contrast to what we're going to see soon about a husband, the father has no rights to the profits of his daughter's property. That means if the daughter has property somehow, however she got property, so the produce of that property the father has no rights for it. He doesn't have. It means that's something he doesn't have a right to, even though he's zakai and everything else. But this thing ain't no zakai. He's not zakai to get the produce, the profits of her property. The chaya means in her lifetime. Rashi points out once she dies, so then he does inherit her. The father would inherit his daughter if she's not married. But in the lifetime, he doesn't have a right to her profits, the payrolls, the profits of her estate. So that's the end of the list of what the father's chuyot are. So just to look over it again, he has the right, the authority over her kedushin to marry her. Agav, he also gets the money of the kedushin. If the chassan marries her with kesef, there are 3 ways to marry: kesef, shtar, biyah. He has rights to decide that she should get married in any way, one of these 3 ways. But if there's money that's coming in, so then the father has the right to that money. Also, her findings, her earnings, he has the right to nullify her vows, and also he accepts the get if the husband wants to divorce her. But one thing he does not have is that he doesn't have right to the payers of her estate. The Mishnah continues, second part, yes.
You said before, does he has the right to accept the get? She can't accept it?
So I don't remember if the wife also, if the husband gives it to right, does it mean also? Does Rashi say anything on that? Rashi in this Kashim and Erison, Kaddish Shabbat, and this is Shuvah and Lo Rishusba. Agav Rashi points out that this is only talking about that she was not Nises, it wasn't a Suin. If it was a Suin, then the father's out of the picture. Mishnah doesn't say this, doesn't speak out that. The Mishnah is only talking about, it doesn't even say the word Nara, but in Rashi says it means a Ketana or Nara, not a Bulgaris. Once she's a Bulgaris, once she's 12 and a half, so then she's not anyone the Rishus Harav. Also, if she had the Suin, if she went through the marriage, so she came to the husband's house, then she's also out of the domain of the father, so he wouldn't be able to get the get. The case would be if he's divorcing her from an Erison stage. Rashi doesn't say about the girl herself. I think that she could, but I don't remember offhand. That's going to be probably in Gittin. Here it says the father could accept the get, and maybe Yaakov's asking if she also has a yad to accept her get. So it doesn't say over here. Then the rest of the Mishnah talks about the husband. This says yes or no. When she gets married, the suin, so then the husband has the same rights as before. Not all of them apply, but the husband has something more than the father didn't have. As far as kedushin doesn't apply, the husband has not accepting any kedushin, but he does get the findings. He gets also the ma'aseh yadayim, and of course the dorm also the husband is the one who's going to nullify the vows. The get that wouldn't apply. He doesn't accept the get. That he's the husband. He's giving the get, not accepting it. But as far as the parents here, it says that there is something that the husband has that the father does not have. Sha'ochel paris b'chayah. There's more that the husband has than the father does not have, that he does get paris. If the wife has an estate, so it doesn't belong to the husband, it belongs to the wife. But he does get the profits of that estate even while she's living. After she dies, he would inherit her. But the Mishnah doesn't speak about that he inherits her. It happens to be true also, but he does have a right to the paris even in her lifetime. The Mishnah continues also more things about the husband. The husband is chayiv to support his wife. We'll talk about later on. The Mishnah talks about the father. The father is obligated to support his daughter, but the husband is obligated to support his wife. Pikuna means if she gets captured, he has to ransom her out. The husband is obligated to redeem. Pikuna, to ransom out his wife if she's captured. And for us, if she dies, he's obligated to bury her. Those are chiyuv from the husband to his wife. So it seems in the Mishnah that the kavura doesn't only mean the actual burial, the grave, but it also means whatever goes along with it, the funeral, whatever is necessary. So he says that even the poorest of Am Yisrael would have to pay for the funeral of his wife to chalilin and a mukonenes. So nowadays there's no such custom anymore, but by a funeral, by a eulogy, so they would use chalilin. Chalilin is flute that would be is a way of arousing. But 2 flutes. They have to have a minimum of 2 flutes. Even the poorest, that's the minimum. They might have more. For richer people, they made more chalilin. It's a kind of an instrument that can be used also for arousing sadness and crying. And that was the standard. They always used chalilin by a funeral, and the minimum would be 2 chalilin. Interesting, even 2. 1 is not enough. It has to be 2 chalilin.
Crying the covered for the nifta that people are concerned about.
Right. And a buchanan means a eulogizer, which is a woman, and they used to have women who that they would eulogize. And they're crying, and they go on and wailers.
I didn't think they eulogized. I thought they just cried.
So the end of Moed Katan over there talks about Mekonen, and it says that the Mishnah itself says in Moed Katan that Mekonenes would mean that she would say something and everybody would answer to be a refrain, that she would be saying something, everybody would say over what she said.
These are women?
Women, yeah. The women, like they know how to do it better than the men.
Yeah, because they had more.
The more motion,
voice,
yeah, the motion.
Sneeze or something.
That still was a problem.
No, sir, but maybe I could add in something. Maybe by the fire, people are less, the Zahara is less strong.
That the Gemara says, by the way, also the Gemara says that mispaid over there. It says the whole service.
Not that there's no Yitzhak.
I'm not sure. Okay, could be that it's also. It's not. There's no singing over here. It's not a singing. Then it's crying. So it says. The pasuk says, "Called the Mekonenos Usvawena." We had that on Tisha B'Av. I think that's when we read it. Maybe it was Shabbos Chazon. I forgot where that Haftarah was. So the Kavura includes also the basic respectful funeral. And Rabbi says that means at least 2 flutes, and also Mekonenes, the woman who would be crying, eulogizing, lamenting. So again, the Mishnah started off back to the Mishnah. The beginning of the Mishnah talked about the father's rights to his daughter's authority. The first thing was Kedushin. And we said Kedushin, there are three ways of Kedushin, Kesef, Shtar, and Bia. Nowadays we only use Kesef, but there are another 2 ways also. And the Gemara's point is going to be, how do you know that the money goes to the father? Besides the jurisdiction that he has, also that the money that comes in for the Kedushin would go to the father. And that's going to be the first sugya, the first Amud over here. How do you know that? The Kesef and Olan, how do you know that the money goes to the father? Amar Vida, Amar Krua, Yatsa Chinam Ein Kasef. So this is a drash, and it's talking about by Amar Via. It's talking about a Pasha Mishpatim where it talks about that a father has a right to sell his daughter. And over there, the pasuk talks about that when he sells her, he's not selling her dock as a maidservant. That means that she'll be a maidservant until she's of age of marriage, and then the master that he's selling her to will have the right to marry her. That's called yud. Either he himself or his son. He marries her to his son, and that's already with the father's consent because he gave her over to be this Amar Via. Also, if it's possible to redeem her. It's possible to redeem the whatever money they paid that they'll give back, and they'll be able to redeem her also. Then it says, if not, then she goes free. When she becomes a Gedola, when she becomes a Nara, so then B'yatzach Yinam and Kasef, she goes out without any money. And she doesn't have to pay herself out. If she was not taken as a wife by the master or by the son of the master, and she wasn't redeemed until she was 12 years old, so then she goes out free. B'yatzach Yinam and Kasef, she goes out free without any money. And there's room for drush in that pasuk. Ein kasef lodan zev, yesh kasef lodan acher, umanu wabia. We could deduce from the pasuk on a drash level that this is a case where she goes out without any money to this master. It means the master's not going to get any money. When she goes out as a nara, she goes out of his domain. So then she leaves his domain without any money. But we can deduce that there's another place where she's going to be leaving somebody's domain, and he is going to get money. What's going to be the case? The father. She was under the father's domain, and then when she leaves the father's domain, how did she leave the father's domain? By getting married. So this Erison that she's going to get now miskadeshes to somebody. So he does get the money. So the Gemara has a drash on it to deduce from the pasuk that since it says by Omer Via that she leaves without any money and any money to the master. So we can deduce that there is another case where there is going to be money upon leaving somebody's domain. That's the father. When she leaves the father's domain by getting married, he gets the money. Yesh kesef. But the Gemara says that's good to say that there's money. But who says who gets the money? It means this drasha doesn't say that. It doesn't say Imanu Obiyah. The other Nachir, all this drasha doesn't say that. It just says here there's no money. And now they do something. So how do you know to deduce that there's money to another master? Maybe there's money to another exit. And this exit, Rashi explains this drasha over here. Exit, just by the exit, not by the master. But this exit, when she leaves the domain of the master over here, the master doesn't get any money. And we can deduce there's another case where she's exiting the domain of a master, and there is money, but maybe she gets the money. If you say the word Adon in the drasha, so then you're saying not this master, different master, and the master gets the money. But it doesn't say that. Maybe there's this. Rashi says the drasha would be Ein Kesef B'Yitziyazu. Just to point out Rashi. Maybe say the drasha Ein Kesef B'Yitziyazu. Avol Yesh Kesef B'Yitziyacheres. Olam Nidahavi. Don't say the word Adon. That there's no money to this master, but there's money to a different master, and the master will be the father. Maybe there's no money in this exit, but there is money in different exit. Means when a woman leaves the domain of her father, there is money. What's the money going to be? The money of her kedushin, and maybe she gets the money. So that's the Gemara's challenge, that this is not enough of a source to say that the father gets the money. Maybe she gets the money. But the Gemara, there's be a thought to the end that the Gemara is going to come to the final answer. But on the way, the Gemara tries some tries. The Gemara says, here the Gemara seems to know, take it for granted that the father has jurisdiction on to marry off his daughter. It's interesting that our main point of our mission is to talk about the jurisdiction of who can marry her off, not who gets the money. That's a side point that he gets the money. But the main point of the mission would have been simply who has the jurisdiction, who has the right to say that she's getting married. And the father says, I have the right. The father comes out, the Mishnah says, the father has the right. And that the Gemara didn't ask Kesef and Olam. The Gemara's question was not, how do you know the father has the right to marry her off to Kesef? The only question was, how do you know he gets the money? But as far as how do you know he has the jurisdiction, that's the Gemara now. And the Gemara says, it takes it for granted. Of course you know that the father has jurisdiction, because it says, as Biti Nasati, that I gave my daughter to this man. Means that this is the case of Motzi Shemra. Over there, it's talking about that the father comes and says that I gave my daughter to this man, and now he comes and says, he frames her and says that she's not a virgin and she really is a virgin. That's the whole machlokas between the father and the husband about the virginity of the daughter. So when he introduces the whole subject, he says, "As bitin asati lishazeh, I gave my daughter to this man," and now he's making this alilos devarim. Lo matzasi lebitcha b'sulim. But the fact that it says, "I gave my daughter," so he means he's the one, he's the giver, he's the one he's the decider, he's the one who gave his daughter to this man. So you see, the father has jurisdiction over giving his daughter, and that goes for granted that if there's money, surely it's going to go to him. That the Gemara says, "I shakla hashla v'yam makabel k'dusha," as it says, "I shakla kaspa." If the father is the one who has the jurisdiction over her to marry her or not, so
What's
sure,
Ihi?
she should take the money. Ihi means her. We had a couple of pages ago also. Ihu is him and Ihi is her. So she's going to take the money. Ihi shakla kaspa. If he has the decision making right that she should marry, then it's surely he gets the money also. That the Gemara doesn't even need that. The Gemara has no question. So what was the question? If you know that, but here you see that there's money. It seems that the Tais has conscious that the other drushes also to say that there's money, but the Nagamar alone, it seems that this is going to be the source that there is money. Yetzachina Mein Kasev says that here there's no money, but other cases there is money, and who's going to get the money? That goes for sure. That goes without saying that if the father has jurisdiction over her that she should marry, who she should marry, so then surely he's the one who gets the money. But the Gemara, Shakla Kaspa, she should get the money, like of course not. Of course, she doesn't get the money since he has the jurisdiction that she should get married. Surely he gets the money. And the Gemara, at this point, the Gemara is happy. The Gemara is kasha the ema ani mila kitana the less layad aval now this layad eat the kadesh nafsha we tishko kaspa. The case of asbiti nesati lishazeh. What is the father talking about that he gave his daughter? It happens to be Rashi points out. Tosfos point out over there the Parsha Moshe Shema. The Gemara proved before is talking about a nara because over there it says that if she was really guilty, she's chayv skila, and she wouldn't be chayv skila if she'd be a kitana. She's not a bas onshin. So the pasuk over there is talking about that Lamaisa she was a nara, she was already a gedola, but you don't see when she was married. When did the father marry her off? It could be that he married her off when she was a ketana, and then she got older, and then she was mazana, and then she's chayiv skila. But in the pasuk, the more is challenging. You don't see in the pasuk that he married her off when she was a nara. Maybe he married her off when she was a ketana. The less layad, not only a ketana that doesn't have a hand, she doesn't have a right, she doesn't have a schus kinyan, she doesn't have the right to be able to make an acquisition. So then the father is the one who has the jurisdiction of her who to marry, and he gets the money also. Aval Nara, this layad, eat the kaddish nafsha, maybe by Nara, who already has a yad, she has a kinyan, a hand to make a kinyan. Maybe she gets the money, and she has a jurisdiction over herself, and she gets the money also. Means the Gemara is questioning that this pasuk is beating the which the Gemara took for granted. It means that the father has the right to decide whom she marries. Maybe that's only talk about a ketana. And the case of Nasi Shema, even though when she sinned, she was already a gedola and she's chayiv skila, but maybe the marriage was made by the father when she was still a ketana. But if she'd be a nara, maybe she's the one who decides if she should marry, and she should get the money also. And our Mishnah says that the father gets the money even if she's a nara. Also, he has the decision also. That's also going to be the truth, that the father has the decision-making rights, even when she's a nara also. And that's the most kasha. How do you know? The most challenging the whole thing. Maybe she's the one who has the decision-making who she should marry, and also she should get the money. So the Gemara tried this. We had this once before again. The Gemara knocked it down. It's going to get knocked down here also. And the Gemara thinks because it says Benurea Beisavia. The pasuk Benurea Beisavia is talking about vows. That's Pashas Matos, where it says that these are the laws of the father nullifying the vows of his daughter. Benurea Beisavia. But Hamar is a drash over here. Benurea Beisavia. In her youth, everything goes to the father. All profits come out of her youth go to the father. The Gemara thinks this is a good rasha to learn out that any money coming in is surely going to go to the father, and if that's true, so then he has jurisdiction over her marriage also. The money and the decision they can go together. That's what the Gemara seems to hold, that the one who has the decision gets the money. The one who gets the money makes the decision. So the Gemara is thinking over here that since it says that all money coming in because of her na'arus, because of her stage of being nara, which is 12 to 12 and a half, everything goes to the father. If that would be a good rasha, we would know that she gets the money, if he gets the money, and therefore he also has the right to marry her off. But the Gemara says it can't be, which we had already before the Gemara used this to disprove this rasha. We're going to see soon. The next thing in the Mishnah talks about her earnings. that her earnings go to the father, and that has to have a special drasha. The Gemara is going to say your drasha is wrong. To say that when the Rabbi means all earnings of all profits of her youthhood go to the father is not true, because then you wouldn't have to have a special pasuk to say that her earnings go to the father. It's also called Shevach Nugin. And since you do need a special pasuk coming up, that shows that your drasha is wrong. Because if one of the Rav said, how do you know that a daughter's earnings go to her father? This is going to be a drasha coming up on the next page. When a man sells his daughter for a maidservant, and over there there's a drash. It's not it's a drash. There's a bito and an amma. Just like a maidservant, her earnings go to her master. That's what a maidservant is all about. That she works for the master. And there's a hekesh over here. Bito la amma. There's some kind of comparison between a daughter and a maidservant. Just like a maidservant, her earnings don't go to herself; they go to the master. So to a daughter, the earnings go to her father. And the Gemara is asking if you have to have such a drasha. That shows that your drasha is wrong. If there's a general drasha, that would have included the earnings also, and you wouldn't have to have a special drasha to say the earnings go to the father. If your drasha is true, lamali, what do you have this fancy drasha for Vito Amma? Typically, that would have been enough drasha to say that any profits of her youthhood go to the father. So you see that it's not true. This drasha is not true. But the Rebbe Sevilla doesn't talk about money. This person is talking about nullifying vows, and has nothing to do with money. And you can't learn out from there that the money goes to the father. So it's not a good drasha. Maybe yes, the Gemara Sakasha, it's true, it's talking about vows. Why not learn out from there? It's true, the pasuk is talking about vows, but learn out the same way the father has jurisdiction over her vows, and he can nullify it, so too he has jurisdiction over the money and her marriage. No, and you can't learn out money from Yisurim, and therefore maybe the money doesn't go to the father. Maybe the money goes to her, and she's the one who decides if she gets married or not. This the Gemara said before also. Maybe the fact that onus mafata over there says it goes to the father, but that the money goes to the father by the knas, by the penalty of onus. Maybe also by money of the kedushin also should go to the father. Regular money, that's an obligation. Like money of marriage is not considered a penalty. You can't learn out from a penalty. Maybe penalty dafka goes to the father, but maybe regular mama does not go to the father. So we still don't know. The Gemara knows, just to take it simple, the Gemara knows that Boshus Pagam goes to the father. If a woman, the Nara, this girl, was embarrassed or some kind of damage happened to her, so the Gemara knows Pasha that goes to the father. The Gemara doesn't say how it knows. You could, okay, we'll see the Gemara's answer. And the Gemara is asking the same way you see Boshus Pagam goes to the father, maybe all monies go to the father. The Gemara says no, Shani Boshus Pagam, that maybe that's because her father also has what's the word, shaykhus, connection. There's the father connected to it. What does it mean? So there's a pshat, different than Rashi. I'm saying a little different than Rashi in this Gemara. Taisus before that Mem with Beis was brought down on the side over there, Gillian from the Taisus Shanim. He says that Vietnam is shaykh because the father is also embarrassed. The father also, it's his loss. It means when a person's daughter is shamed, it's an embarrassment to the father also. He's part of the shame. He's part of the value. The value, her value is his value. A person sees his daughter as part of himself. So the Boshus Pagam goes to the father because he was the one who Boshus Pagam. And the Gemara says all these sources are not going to be enough reason to say that the kedushin to go to the father. So the Gemara is back to the question that even though you brought a pasuk that there's money, Yasachina Mein Kasef, that shows us that there is money. Someplace else there is going to be a case of money, but who does it go to? That was the most question, and we didn't succeed in answering the question yet. We tried to say that he has jurisdiction over her marriage, maybe only over Tana, but maybe once she's an Ara, then she gets the money and she has jurisdiction over her own marriage. How do you know that it should also, the Gemara tried Benaria Beisavia, also didn't work. So therefore, we still didn't get an answer. How do you know that a father is the one who gets the money from his daughter's kedushin, and he has the right to decide if she should get married? Ela Mistava, the Chimamayit Rahmana Yitzia, Chimamayit Rahmana Yitzia the Chavasa Kamamait. I'm not sure. Yitzia the Chavasa Kamamait. Back to this drasha that we said Yosachina Mein Kasef, that in the case of a maidservant leaving her domain of the master because she's now leaving, she's already in Gedola and she's leaving, and over there's no money to the master, but there's another case where there is going to be money coming in, so it's similar. Over there, it's talking about it goes to the master. So Yitzia the Chavasa, it's going to be a similar kind of an exit. The similar exit is going to be over there. Went to the master. Here also the case would have been that it goes to the master. The Gemara wanted to try to wiggle out of it and say it doesn't mean master. It means just exiting. Exiting. There's money. There's no money over there. A different exit has money. And maybe the exit is going to be money to herself. But the Gemara says no. It wouldn't be similar enough to make the drasha. The drasha when you say Here there's no money. Someplace else there is money. The money is going to be similar to the case that would have been over there. Would have been to the master. So therefore, the drush here is to say that it goes to the master, not that it goes to herself. And once we know that the money goes to the master, to her father, also he's the one who has jurisdiction on the marriage. Also, Taisa speaks that out. Just to point out Taisa in the fourth wide line. The hashta chivin the shamin and the high the kaspa davia svarhu diu nam mekabel the hashta bia shakul kesef kidusha he tikdash nafsha. The Taisa used the opposite for what the Gemara said before, but the Taisa says that it holds strong here also that the one who gets the money and the one who makes the decision of the marriage is one and the same. So if we say that this Rosh is saying that the father gets the money of her kedushin, that means he's also the one who decides that she should get married. He's the one who has jurisdiction that she should marry, and he gets the money. The Mars the Kasha of Holo Damya Hoyitzia Lahoyitzia, they're not similar. You're saying the whole Rush is based, the whole Rush was saying now is based on this diak that it says by Omar Bria when she goes free, there's no money. And by a marriage, another way of leaving the father's domain, over there is going to be money. But the Gemara says it's not the same kind of exit. How can you make such a Rush? It's not just a similar kind of an exit, because when the maidservant leaves her master's domain, she's completely out. No, the master still is a master of her. Once she becomes a Nara, she becomes 12 years old. So then she leaves the domain of her master, and she's not anymore under his domain at all. But by the father, even after she becomes she gets Erison, she comes with Kudeshes, she doesn't leave the father's domain completely. Why? That the father is still the one who has the jurisdiction to make the Nesuin, to give her over to the chuppah, which means the second stage of marriage, which means Nesuin. The father is the one who still is the one who has that jurisdiction. Until that time, he still has jurisdiction. So how come you're saying that it's considered a drasha that this exit, when she leaves the domain of the master, there's no money. But when she leaves the domain of the father, there is money and it goes to the father. It isn't as good a hekesh. It's not a good drasha, not a good hekesh. It's not a good drasha because it isn't the same kind of exit. The Gemara answers, in some ways it is. She does leave the domain of the father as far as nullifying the vows, because till now he was the one who had the right to nullify the vow. And now that she's married in the Erison stage, then it's not enough that the husband, the chassan, is also a shutif. That when she's in the stage of a namarasa, so then you have to have the joint effort of both the father and the husband to nullify her vows. The father's not by himself anymore. And that the Gemara sees that she left the domain of the father completely, even though we might say that's not called completely, that she still is in his domain, that you also have to have him. But the Gemara looks at it that's called that the complete change. So that's the end of the Gemara. And what was it? What was the main point? How do you know that the money goes to the father? It becomes an agav that he also has jurisdiction that goes together hand in hand. And that the Gemara knows the first point of the Mishnah, that the father has jurisdiction over his daughter as far as deciding if she should get married. And that's Kedushin. And also the three ways of Kedushin, Kesef, Shtar, and Bia. The father is the one who has the decision right that she should marry this man. And the one of the three ways of getting married. And if there is money, the money goes to the father. And the way the drush comes out, it's really based on the whole point of the Kesef. That by Kesef, you see the money goes to the father, based on the drush of Mama Maria. You see that the money goes to the father. And because of that, we understand that also the right to decide that she should get married also goes to the father. It goes hand in hand. Who gets the money and who has the decision making? It goes hand in hand. Once we see in the pasuk that this drasha teaches us that the money goes to the father, also we know that he's the one who makes the decision that she should get married. The next Gemara is about the other two kinds of marriage. The bottom line, one line up, shtar bia. Over there it also says the father has the right to decide she should marry. Over there there's no money. And where's the drasha that he's the one who has the decision? Maybe only by kesef kedushin over there, since he gets the money over there, he has the right to decide she should marry. But how do you know that he's the one who decides to marry if there's going to be a kedusha kesef or kedusha bia? How do you know that? The person is talking about when a woman marries. It happens to be talking about that she was divorced and married somebody else. But the point is talking about a marriage over there, and it says she becomes married to somebody. All kinds of marriages are compared in the same person. Because as she becomes married to somebody, and it doesn't distinguish if it's marriage by kesef or shtar or bia. So all the ways of getting married are all compared to each other. And therefore, if you find out one kind of marriage that it goes to the father, that the father has jurisdiction over it, he's the one who decides if she should marry with kesef. So too, he's the one who decides if she should marry with shtar and bia also. And that's enough of a source to say that Kesef Shtaran Bia. No matter how she's getting married, the father has jurisdiction to say she should get married. And also, when there's money coming in, it happens to be that he gets the money also, and that's really the source of the whole drasha. That's where everything starts from. That he gets the money, and if he gets the money, that means he has jurisdiction. And if he has jurisdiction over Kedusha Kesef, he also has jurisdiction over Kedusha Shtaran, Kedusha Bia. That's the end of that sugya. The next part of the Mishnah says, the father also is the one who has rights to her findings. If she finds something, so the father gets the finding. She's 12 years old, surely a Ktana, but even a Nara, maybe Ktana doesn't have a yad, maybe that's a finish that she's considered Mishum Laki Shalom, that the findings are considered hers, and then it goes to the father. And even a Nara, even when she's 12 years old, she's already a Gedola, but if she finds something before she's a Bulgaria, so it goes to the father. And that the Gemara says, top line, Mishum Eva, that there shouldn't be animosity. There shouldn't be animosity between the father and the daughter. Rashi says because he's supporting her, and then she finds something and she keeps it herself. So that's going to cause animosity that I'm supporting you, and now when you find $100 ago, you don't give it to me. So since the father feels that it's rightfully coming to me, even though he really might be wrong, he might be wrong that this is his obligation to support her. He doesn't have to support her even, but it happens to be his good heart that he's supporting her. So he feels that it would only be right if she give me the findings, even though halachically you deserve it, you own it. But the father feels it was not right, and therefore the Chacham made a takana that her findings should go to the father. This is Rashi's pshat. Taisa says a different pshat that because according to Rashi, it only would hold true if the father is supporting her. We're going to see later on the father doesn't have to support his daughter, and according to Rashi, then it wouldn't apply the whole Eva, and her findings could belong to herself. But we pass like Taisvus that even if he's not supporting her, we don't want this to be animosity because we want him to get a good shidduch for his daughter. If he's going to be upset at his daughter, she finds something and she keeps it herself, it's going to cause bad feelings in the father. When it comes time to marry her, he might not find the best shidduch. He might not work hard enough to find a good shidduch for her. So therefore, we want it to be a good relationship, and therefore we say if she finds something, she gives it to the father, and there's good relationship, and then the father's going to find her a good shidduch. Mm-hmm. That's the earn. That's the next thing. I see that. That's the next thing. That really is true. That the earnings really go to the father, but they don't do it nowadays. Why not?
Mishum Eva, they don't do that.
Mishum Eva the other way. So that first thing was Messiah. So it sounds like finding and earning is not the same thing. Even though the Gemara is going to say right away, I see that the Gemara is going to say there's a pasuk we're going to learn out. We had already before earlier this day that the Ma'aseh Daim is a drasha to say it goes to the father, but it seems that wouldn't include findings. It means if you go look at the Gemara in a different order. The Gemara says first Mitzvah and then Ma'aseh there. Mitzvah is only Xavier, Rabbanan, and Mishum Eva. There shouldn't be animosity. But the Ma'aseh there, the Gemara is going to be now a pasuk, and still you have to come on to Eva for the point about findings. That means findings is not included in earnings, even though earnings is going to be the Raisa that it goes to the father. But findings still needs a special kind of Rabbanan, and that was because of animosity. Ma'aseh there. How do you know that Ma'aseh Daim goes to the father? Which l'chora means also that the father could tell his daughter to work. That he has the right to her earnings, so she's supposed to work. She's not supposed to just sit around. She's supposed to work, and the earnings go to the father. How do you know? Of course, it only means while she's a nar. Once she's a Bulgaris, then she's in her own rishus. And once she gets married, the Suan also, she may be in the husband's rishus. But now she's a nara and she's not yet married, so the earnings go to the father. How do you know? And we had this drasha a few minutes ago. Just like there's a drasha, not a svara, it's a drasha that says that a daughter is similar to a maidservant in one way. Just like a maidservant, the earnings go to her handiwork, whatever she makes with her hands goes to her master. So too, the daughter, her earnings go to her father. That's a drash. A drash to say that the earnings of a daughter go to the father. The pasuk over there is talking about a ktana. Who has the right to sell his daughter? What kind of daughter is she? She's a daughter who's a ktana. Once she's a nara, then she goes free. She's not anymore maidservant. So the whole case of a maidservant is only talking about when she's a ktana. So maybe this halacha, Ma'aseh Daim, only is true when she's a ktana. Once she becomes 12 years old, then she's not a avri anymore. So maybe also the whole halacha of earnings doesn't apply to a girl who's already 12 years old. But a nara that he cannot sell her, so then there's no source in this pasuk to say it's talking about that the earnings go to the father. The Gemara says, Mistavra, the Gemara tries a teretz, then the Gemara is not going to like it, they'll find another teretz. First the Gemara says, very interesting. Mistavra da v'yahavim. A svara means you're right. The pasuk only shows you a ktana, but I'll tell you a svara that the earnings go to the father. Why? The very hard svara. He's not kedai techmasia de alav davia ella hadazachi la rachman alav the minstrel chuppah hechi matzi masala hakamavatala memasia da. If the earnings go to herself, if a nara has a right to her own earnings, how could it be the father gave rights to the father to give her over to the chuppah? Means there are two things the father could do. Amish didn't talk about the chuppah. Amish just spoke about the kiddushin, but it's also a second stage. But the Gemara mentioned a couple of minutes ago that he also has the right to give her over to the chuppah. Means the nesuah, the second stage. He gives her over to the husband. That now she goes to his home, and he has the right to do that. That's not the girl's decision. That's the father's jurisdiction. He first accepts kesef kiddushin, and she's married. The Raisa, she's married on the Raisa level, and then he also gives her over to the husband. He brings her to the husband's house and says, now you're married, and he brings her into the husband's house. So if she has rights to her own earnings, how does he have the right to stop her from that day's earnings? Very interesting. Is the day of the wedding, the daughter says, I want to make money today. If the money is hers, if her earnings is her own money, so how could the Torah have given him the right to marry her the day of the wedding? It's taking away her earnings. Very strange svara, we would say. That would be a reason to say that it must be that it's her earnings. Because if it will be his earnings, then he wouldn't have a right to stop her from earning money that day.
He has a right to stop her.
He has a right to marry her, and the marriage takes time. Not that the kiddushin itself doesn't take time, because the father could accept the ring or the money, and she doesn't have to stop working. But the Mesirah L'chuppah means he tells her, come, my daughter, we're going to your husband's house. And she says, I have a job. And he says, no, my daughter, we're coming to your husband's house. And she's going to lose her day's
He
work.
has the right.
He has the right to do that. He's the right to Mesirah L'chuppah, and she's going to lose her day's earnings. So how could he do that? It must be that the earnings belong to him. That's the Gemara's spell. The fact that the Torah gave rights to the father to give her over to the marriage, to the chuppah, to the husband's house. How could he do that? He's stopping her earnings. It must be that is her earnings. It must be it's his earnings. It must be it's his earnings, so that's his right. He wants to take off a day's earnings. And I'll give over to the chuppah. Now she's married. Now the earnings are going to go to the husband. But that day's earnings, not the whole from now on. That day's earnings, he could stop her. How could he stop her to marry? It must be that the earnings belong to him. But the Gemara doesn't like this. Rav Achai asks on this. I'll give you. That's the whole problem. Maybe Taka has to give her that day's earnings. If he wants to marry her, he has to give her the day's earnings.
And we're making it very tough on the father that he's not going to want to marry off his daughter because he's going to lose money.
No, he can lose what? No, once he's marrying her off, he's losing all the money anyway. From now on, the money's not going to get money's going to go to the husband, not to him. But one day of the marriage, so if that day earning, the last day of her earnings, how is he able to take it away? So the Gemara says, I'll pay for it. He's going to pay for that day's earnings. There wouldn't be enough of a proof to say that it must be that it's his. Maybe it's her earnings, and he has no right technically to stop her from that day's earnings. But I'll say, my daughter, how much do they make a day? You make $50 a day. Here's the $50 and come to the husband's house. Maybe he'll give her over to the husband's house at nighttime. There's no jobs at night, no money. I'm not losing any money. There's no jobs, and he'll give her over to the husband's house on the Shabbos Yantiv. So that wouldn't be so this answer wouldn't be a good answer. To say that the reason why on Shabbos there's no work, no job, you don't make any money on Shabbos. You can't get Kedushin. You don't talk about Kedushin. We're talking about the chuppah. We're talking about coming into the husband's house. You're talking about Kedushin. You can't get Kedushin on Shabbos. The first stage of the Kedushin. But that's already done. That the father accepted it. That's not a problem. That wasn't, that we know already.
So take her over to the house. So we can do
Right.
that on Shabbos.
So that you could. Because there's, no kinyan. The kinyan is the Kedushin already. I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So the Rav Achai was not satisfied with the Gemara's teretz. Means again, we're trying to figure out how do you know that the father gets the earnings of the daughter. The Gemara tried that he gets that the fact that he could marry her, send her to the husband's house. That means he's stopping her from getting earnings. Must be it's his earnings. But the Gemara challenged that with three possibilities. It's possible that even though the earnings are hers, he could get around that. He won't be mobs at her. So we still are looking for the question: how do you know that the father is eligible to get his daughter's earnings? We did show it from the Amma Avriya, but that only would be by Ketana. How do you know it even by a Nara? Now the Gemara says, the new teretz, Ella, Ketana lo tzricha kra. Hashas vuni mazbala masya davi boy, Ella ki yisich kra le Nara. That the drasha before is a good drasha, That says that just like a daughter, just like a maidservant, her earnings go to the master, so to a daughter, the earnings go to the father. The kasha on that drasha was maybe it's talking about a ketana. And that the Gemara says for a ketana, he wouldn't need a drasha. It's a fancy drasha, a hekesh, bitol amma. He wouldn't need any drasha. The fact that a father has a right to sell his daughter as a maidservant, that means that he has rights over the money. If he could sell it, that means that the money goes to him. When he sells his daughter, who gets the money? The father gets the money. So that means that he has a right to his daughter's earnings. You don't need a drasha to say bito la amma, that just like amma the earnings go to the master, so bito also. You don't need it for a ketana, because a ketana surely he has a right to her earnings. He even could sell her. It must be the pasuk is coming to tell you, like a Meno Indian. If you don't need the pasuk to tell you about a ketana, it must be coming to tell you about a nara. That's how the Gemara ends off, that for ketana you wouldn't need a pasuk. Ketana let's read Chakra. Ash's women is asmala ma'asademi boya. If he could sell her, surely he gets her earnings. The pasuk must be coming to tell you that a nara also he has rights to her earnings, and that's the truth. So we said here there's a drasha to say that the earnings of a nara go to the father because you don't need it for ketana because he even could sell her. It must be come to tell you that a nara also he has rights to her earnings. I think one before top line it said that by your findings also go to the father because of animosity. Next halach in the Mishnah said, that's the first pasuk that it says in Parshas Matos that he has the right to nullify her vows. That's open pasuk. Even when she's a nara also, and she makes a vow, the father has the right to nullify it. The next point is Mekabel Gita. It says in the Mishnah that he accepts her get. And the question was, how do you know? Manola, that the father has the right to. Now, Rashi said it's only talking about Arusa. Once she's in a Sula, then he can't. Then she's out of her father's domain. Then she'll have to get herself. But when she's in Arusa, so then the father accepts the get for her. Over there it says, it's talking about a woman who was divorced and then she remarries. And the pasuk compares them. She leaves and she gets married. There's a comparison between a divorce and getting married. If by the marriage, the father is the one who has the rights to the marriage, he's the one who has jurisdiction and accepts the kedushin. So too, the divorce also is done by the father. So he's the one who accepts it also. And the last sugya is about payros. Is it the last sugya? I'm not sure if it's the last sugya. We'll have more. What does it say now? The father does not have rights to the profits of his daughter's estate. That's so simple. This was part. I didn't have time to highlight this, so we can go a little bit further now to highlight what we're talking about. It says, but now the Gemara is going to say that the Yosi does argue. It's going to be machlokas about this point. Someone's going to argue, and that's going to be Rabbi Yossi. Same as our Mishnah, that the father does not have rights to the profits of his daughter's estate. But Rabbi Yossi argues that he does. The father does have a right. So what's the introduction? The introduction to this thing is going to be why should anybody get the payros? It's her payros. It's hers. It's her estate. Both from the father and the husband. Why should anybody get payros? So the introduction to this is what Gemara is going to say right away. They really it's the Kanad Rabbanan because we want to give him rights in order that he should also do his responsibility. The Gemara we want that if she gets captured, which we said in Chayiv Lifdosa, that was in the Mishnah. So we want that the father and the husband should redeem this girl if she gets captured. It seems that being captured in those days was not uncommon. So we wanted that there should be somebody that should be responsible to redeem her, to ransom her out if she does get captured. So by the husband, there surely is such a takana. Says in the Mishnah, Chayiv Lifdosa, and because of that, we also gave him the payros. It means we wanted to make it one for one. The fact that we want her to be redeemed when she needs to be redeemed, to be ransomed out, so we tell the husband, you're chayav to ransom her out, and in compensation of that, we're going to give you the payros, that you have the right to the profits of her estate. And the question is going to be if you have to make that takana also for the father, or maybe the father is going to redeem his daughter even if he doesn't have any compensation. The Tanakhama says that only by the husband do we make such a takana that he should get the profits of his wife's estate, because if not, he's going to hesitate from redeeming her. He's going to say that she has an estate, she has profits over there, she has a lot of money, I should have to redeem her. So Ranan did take the precaution to make sure that the husband should not hesitate, and they said that he's chayav to redeem his wife if she's captured, and he has the right to her payros. He has the right to the profits of her estate. The father's not a father. It seems in the Gemara that if I don't know, maybe the culture changed, it sounds that the father's going to be more caring about his daughter than the husband about his wife. And by the father, you don't have to have any compensation. The father on his own is going to redeem his daughter even if he's not obligated to. But the husband, if his wife's gonna have a lot of money from getting the payers of her estate, so not necessarily will he feel the responsibility to redeem her. So by the husband, they have to make such a takana, but by the father, they didn't have to, and therefore the father doesn't get payers. But the Rebbe Abida says it's necessary for the father also. He says the father also will say, my daughter has a big bank account. What does she need me to redeem her for? He's also going to hesitate not to redeem her. He's going to say that she has a big wallet, kisa, like a wallet, a bank account, and let her redeem herself. Well, she says the problem is if she doesn't have enough money, sometimes she might have a bank account, but not enough. So we do want the father to be responsible and redeem his daughter. So we gave the parents to him. So again, what comes out, everybody holds by the husband, he has to be encouraged to redeem his wife and shouldn't have any kind of hesitation. And if you're not going to give him payers, his wife will have a bank account on her own payers, he'll hesitate, and like she's on her own. She's financially taking care of herself, so that's not my responsibility. So we said, no, that you have responsibility for her. You're managing her properties and taking the profits. So now when it comes time to redeem her, so he feels the responsibility and he will redeem her. That's by the husband. And by the father's machlokes, and then it boils down to be the psychological analysis if the father is on his own gonna redeem the daughter without having this compensation or not. It seems to be possible like our Mishnah that the father doesn't get payers because he's going to redeem her anyway. Then the Mishnah went on to the halachas about the husband now. Till now we spoke about the father. Now it says in contrast, the husband has something that the father did not have. What did it say? This says, etc. Okay, so the husband does have a right to payers. And now the Gemara brings in a side point. I don't know how it comes in yet over here. But the father, Kosov means the father. The father gave some kind of a dowry to his daughter that she's getting married. So he said he gave her payros or clothing or utensils that should come from the father's house to the husband's house. Means that she should bring into the marriage. The father gave a present to his daughter that going into the marriage, she should bring these things into the husband. But she died. She died before she got to the husband's house. She died during the Erusin. Does the husband have a right to get it? So Tanakama says that the husband doesn't get it because she didn't make it to the Nisuin. It was only he gave it to her, but she didn't make it to the Nisuin. Only the Erusin. So the Erusin doesn't make that it belongs to the husband yet. But Mishnah Nasan Zacha about the Dvarma level. But Nasan argues and says yes. So it's machlokas that seems that there was this is Rashi between the Erusin and the Nisuin. She died. Does the husband get the presents that the father had given to his daughter and she didn't make it to the Nisuin? The Gemara sees a similar machlokas and thinks that it's comparable. What's that talking about? A different subject, but the Gemara thinks that it's comparable. The Tanan, the Samala, the Gasha, Vayman and Asun, Vayman and Erusin, go Asik Tol. This is talking about the Ksuba. This is a different subject altogether. Not about the father giving a present, but that the husband is obligating himself to give a bigger Ksuba. It means there's a minimum Ksuba that every husband is chayv to his wife, and that's one of a sign if she's a basula, virgin, 200, if not, then 100. Besides that, they give Tosefes, they give extra. That's how we read also in the Ksuba nowadays. It says, Kesuvos, the Tzavi, Ploni, Chassan, the Hosef, Min delay, Od, Masayim, Skupin Kesef, I forgot, Od, Mez, Skupin Kesef. So they add on to the obligation of the Ksuba more on his own, Tosefes. The addition is considered a cover to the Kala that it gives more than not just the minimum obligation. So that Tosefes, what if they didn't make it to the Nisuin? They got divorced or he died between the Erusin and the Nisuin. Is she eligible to the Tosefes also? She gets the Ksuba from the Erusin also. That's what it says over here. That even from Erusin, if the marriage is terminated, either because of divorce or because of death before the Nisuin, she gets the Ksuba. She gets the Hamana Masayim. But how about the Tosefes? So that's machlokas. The Samalon is Gasha, Beiman Esun, Beiman Erusin, go Basakol. If she is widowed or divorced, either from the Nisuin or even from Erusin, she collects everything. Because even to Tosefes, even if you owe the Ksuba more than the minimum of 100, 200, she gets everything. Rabbi Elazar ben Azai Omer, Binan Nisuin, go Basakol. But when the Erusin, Ksuba go Masayim, go Mana. That only if they went through with it and became married, mamish, she came into his husband's house, then she gets the Tosefes also. But if the gerushin or the death happened in the stage of Erusin, then she only gets the minimum, which means a Basula would get 200, and Amana would get 100. but the extra Tosefes, he didn't mean to give her only if they come into the Nisuin. And they Shelo Kasav La Amud Beis, Shelo Kasav La Elam Nastakonsa. He only wrote it with the intention of taking her into his house. Just because of the Erusin alone, he didn't mean to give her all this extra money. So the Gemara, that's the Mishnah over there. And the Gemara thinks that this is comparable to our subject about the father giving to his daughter. The Gemara thinks that it's totally Havah. It's the same logic. If you hold that the husband didn't mean to give it only if the marriage goes through to Nisuin, so far the father didn't mean to give a present to his daughter only if it goes through to the Nisuin. But the one who says that that the husband meant to give the ksuba to Tosefes even if they did not go through to the Nisuin, so like the Rabbanan, that also that the father gave it to his daughter even if it doesn't go to Nisuin. But the Gemara says not necessarily. Third line, low, not necessarily. The cool yarmulke of Elazar ben Azariah could be about Elazar ben Azariah that husband does not give it only if it carries through to the Nisuin. From the Erusin, he wouldn't give Tosefes. The one who says that the father also doesn't give says it's consistent. That the same way the husband doesn't give it, also the father doesn't give it only if it goes through the Nisuin. There's a difference between the logic of the father and the logic of the husband. It could be that even according to the Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that says that the husband doesn't give it only if the marriage follows through into Nisuin, but it could be the father has a different criteria of when he wants to give it. Once there was an Erusin, that's enough reason that the father feels that he wants to give the present to his daughter. The Gemara doesn't explain so much. How come Dafka, the husband is different? The husband only meant to give Tosefes if he's going to marry her, and if not, not. But the father could be meant to give the present to his daughter, even if the marriage didn't carry through, and by Erusin it was terminated. So she died. So the Gemara doesn't explain. And the Gemara doesn't say the opposite either. It could be the opposite far either. That's the end of the sugya as far as we go today. That's the interesting thing. That goes into the subject about all kinds of presents that the father gave, that even after right after the wedding, it sounds in our Gemara that if it was, the only question is she died before the Nisuin. But if she did make it to the Nisuin. But now comes a different question. It was after the Nisuin, and a week after the Nisuin something happened. How about that? Yeah, but the post can talk about that. It could be that the father didn't mean to give this gave a huge present, and then she died a few days later, or whatever, divorced a few days later. So then the husband's going to get all that estate that he gave to his daughter. So the post can.
How much time is this?
How much time? Taisus made a takana about a year. He said a year after the marriage, but he says this is like Taisus talks about these. And then the husband's going to get all of that, or the ksuba that wants to add the suin, so then the whole ksuba is going to go to the wife, all the tosefes. That does seem to be simple, but this is the sugi we talked about. If it wasn't meant only for long term, not for a short term kind of a marriage. Okay, that was the end of the sugi today, and Baruch Hashem, we're back on and back on this month, and we'll be continuing with